Hello friends, and welcome back to my crafty space. In today's video, I am going to be doing a project planning process for you guys for the very first time using the Paper Person monthly subscription kit. So this month the theme was very much food related. I subscribed to the main kit, which is all of this, and then I did also purchase one of the add-on stamp sets. So the add-on that I got, because you guys know that we are avid craft beer fans, was the one all about craft beer. So it's got like the little tap on it for the kegs. It's got a beer bottle. It's got a carboy that, you know, is what makes some of the beer. It's got a bunch of different like local brew. I love craft beer. At the brewery, all those kinds of things. So I'm super, super excited that Kelly finally did a beer themed stamp set. So in addition to the stamp, I also have the main kit. So the main kit has a 4x6 stamp set. It's got the white cardstock alphabet stickers. It's got a sheet of label stickers. And then everything else comes in 12 by 12 scrapbook pages or scrapbook papers. But some of them do include cut aparts. So these will be my 3x4 cards that I will be using, because I will cut this sheet all apart when I do my planning. Then there's another sheet that has a few more of the 3x4 cards, and then also 4x6 cards. So these are going to be great for like Project Life or some of those story kits or story projects that I like to do. Not story kits, story projects. And then on the back side of these, there's also other types of pattern paper. Both of these are awesome. One is lined and one has grid on it, because if I decide that I don't like whatever the card is on the front side, I can turn it over and then it becomes a journaling card. So that's really nice to have those really neutral, but also where they have clear journaling space on the back. In addition to those, we have a couple of designed papers. So this one has a bunch of pasta noodles on it and then a stripe on the back. This one is a bunch of tomatoes, and on the back is this red pattern that's got a spoon, a fork, and a knife. We've got this leaf pattern here, which is really nice, and the back side is kind of a chevron-ish looking pattern. And then the last one here is a bunch of kitchen utensils, and the back side is this diamond green pattern. So what I am going to do is put you on fast forward here while I get to work planning out some stories that I can tell with this kit. And then once I have that done, we'll slow back down and we will finish out this video. So let's go ahead and jump in. All right, you guys, so I'm gonna get started with planning this one by first taking those cut apart sheets and just cutting them all apart. I know that I could have kept them together and used the back side for the pattern paper, but honestly, I am a pocket page scrapbooker. So for me, it makes a lot more sense to just go ahead and cut those all apart so that they are now cards instead of a full 12 by 12 page. Once I had those done, I did go ahead and start organizing them based on the pictures that were on them or the sentiments that they said, trying to put together some different stories that I could tell with this kit. Now, full disclosure, I am terrible at documenting food. Like, I never take pictures of the things that we're eating, or I just don't really document the things that we eat or like restaurants or anything like that. Well, we haven't even been to a restaurant in a year. So, you know, it's just, I knew that this kit was going to be a little bit tricky to figure out stories to tell with it. But spoiler is that I do end up figuring out a whole bunch of stories. So that made me immensely happy. Now, what I'm working on here so far, in the top right corner there, I super, super loved the card that had all of the hot sauce bottles. We are huge fans of spicy food in our house. We love Mexican food. We love jalapenos on everything. Spicy food is a must-have around here. So I knew when I saw that, I wanted to tell the story about our love for spicy food. Then there were a couple of cards, one that said like baking at home or home baking, I think is what it says. And then there's one with a bunch of like little baking icons like eggs and a mixer and a spatula and a rolling pin, all those kinds of things. And I thought that that really lent itself well to telling the story about making cookies with my kids. I don't know if that was last week or the week before, but recently I made cookies with the kids. So I thought that would be a really fun story to tell with that. Then there's also one that says homemade, and then I loved it paired with the pots and pans. And I thought that would be a great opportunity to tell the story about Aaron taking over the cooking in our house. So I just needed to find a picture maybe of him cooking or something. I'm sure I had one at this point. Also, I knew Day in the Life was coming up. So if I didn't, I would definitely be taking one then. So it just, it worked out for me. And then there's also the little bread icon card there, which is super cute. And that immediately made me think of every October, technically it's November. Every November, our family makes pan de muerto. Well, I make pan de muerto, which is bread of the dead for Dia de los Muertos. And I thought that that would be a cool story to tell using the bread icon card. Ultimately, I will decide to tell a different story with that. Which happens after the whole planning. So instead, I also had a couple pictures of just some homemade French bread that I had made at the beginning of COVID when you couldn't find bread in the stores. And so instead, I tell that story about kind of how the beginning of the pandemic and everything was scarce and all of that craziness. So what I have here that I'm doing now, I've got a pile of cards that I'm thinking about using for a spread in Project Life. I usually like to challenge myself to tell 1 week of Project Life stories using all of the different kits I get. The thing that's nice about that is it helps me to change up the types of products that I'm using, but also it helps me to change up the lenses that I'm telling my stories in. So for this week, when I go to document it, I have made a note to myself to go ahead and make sure I take pictures of my food that week so that I have something to talk about. So this, I'm just going to write Project Life. I'll go figure out what week I want to do it on. This one's going to be for week 12, and I will put it with all those cards and set those aside into one of my pouches here. It's just my favorite way to store things so that everything stays together. I did take one of those 12 by 12 papers and I cut it into 2 4x6s because I typically use some of those pattern papers as cards for my kits. And I don't do a lot of 12 by 12 projects, as you guys probably know. So I'm not too concerned about cutting that into a smaller piece. Like, it's not that big a deal. So this one is where I'm thinking about telling the story about bread. I really like the stamp. It's got like an oven mitt on it. I forget what it says around it, something about baking, I'm sure. And it fits perfectly inside one of those circle labels. So I grabbed one of the circle labels, I just cut it right off, and I'm making a note to myself to remember to stamp the little oven mitt icon circle in the middle of that label and then put the label on top of the pattern card there. Then I have this card right here that has these mustard yellow lines on it. It's like a ledger type of card. And that is the backside of one of the 4x6 cards that I wasn't particularly fond of. And what I like about that is when you flip it over to the backside, now you have a card where you can add some journaling to. With the Paper Person kits, they generally they don't come with a lot of journaling cards. It's mostly filler cards and titles and patterns, not a lot of journaling. So I really appreciate that she started adding some more journal-ish patterns to the back sides of the journal cards, because then you can flip them over. This one here has the mustardy stripe and the other one has like a light grid pattern. Both of those lend themselves well to journaling. So that is what I'm going to do with the ones that I don't really like. For this one, I want to put that home baking card in there. I like the idea of having the stripe to add some journaling there. But then I'm struggling because I also really like the card with all the icons. And if I put that right next to the home baking card, then that's so much white. And I also don't really like that. So I'm just sitting here kind of thinking, what am I going to do with all of this? And then I get this idea. What if I cut some things into circles and then make the second page there look almost like a baking cookie sheet? That could be kind of fun to just create a grid with some larger circles. I'm not sure how big those circles are going to have to be because I want them to be, I want them to fit on that page kind of like a baking sheet, but I'll have to figure out that sizing at some point later. So then I'm just trying to think about how to add this stuff and what to put in here so that I can have my journaling, but I can also have these icons. Ultimately, what I'm going to do is pull out some more of the paper that has the stripe or the ledger lines on it, one of these cards from the Project Life kit. And I think I'm going to take that and cut those into 3 circles. So I will have 3 circles that have the mustard yellow with the lighter yellow lines. That will become my journaling, and that will be 3 of the 6 circles. The other 3 circles will be photos, and then I want to find something that I can put behind the icons there so that it's not a whole bunch of white on white on white on the left side of this page. So I will eventually go back in my stash, and I believe I will pull out a blue patterned card, which I think actually looks really cool once I get it there, but it does take me a few seconds to figure out what the heck I want to do with this. I did like this grayish colored what is that, a whisk, I believe? Yes, a whisk. I liked the whisk card there. I thought that went well with the whole idea of baking. And plus, if I want to, I can add a photo on top of that or a sentiment on top of that. I can do all kinds of things there. And then here's where I pull out the dark blue, and I actually really like the way the dark blue pops because it's got the same tone as that grayish whisk card. It doesn't clash too much because it has that same bluish tone. So I think it's going to work. And then I will just take the icons, punch that into a circle, and then put it into the middle of that blue card. So I think that this one's going to turn out pretty cool once I get to it. It just took me a few seconds to figure out how to design this page so that I could get all the things I wanted to get on it. So now we're going to put this one away, and then we'll get started on the next story. One of the cards I will point out that I added into my Project Life pile is the one that has the sandwich or the components of a sandwich. I love that card and I really want to use it, but we don't really eat a lot of sandwiches. So I feel like when we get to that week of Project Life, this is just a side note, I think I need to make some fancy sandwiches just so that I can use that card. Yeah. Anyway, back to what we're doing here. So now we're going to work on the spread about spicy food. I really, really liked this orange and red striped paper. It just made me think of a Mexican restaurant. It made me think of hot and spicy because hot and spicy is typically reds and oranges. So that made sense to me. And what I'm thinking I will do is use a piece of this for a page that will be outside of the page protector. So that's, almost 7 inches by 8 1/4. And I have a section that can go at the top and a section that can go at the bottom. So then in the middle, I can add some photos or journaling or something that will tell the story of our spicy food. So I'm going to look at this stamp set, see is there anything that makes sense as a title. I do kind of like the one that says home. I forget what's under it, but it's got a big home on it. And then right here, I'm using my cutting mat to help me determine sizing. How would it look if I put 3 pictures? How would it look if I put 4 pictures in a row? How are things going to fit on this spread? That's one of the benefits about that cutting mat is just it gives me a little bit of perspective on the scale of the project. So I think that's, one of my favorite things about it. I also have this red card here that I thought went really well with all of this as well. And then that gives me a spot for journaling. So I think that's one of 2 legit journaling cards that are in this kit. I really hope that in the future that Kelly designs some more journaling cards to go in with her other cards because I need more space to write. So I'm thinking I'm going to add a photo into one of the pockets. So I'll do a 2 of the 3x4 on top with a 4x6 on the bottom. The 4x6 will be these spicy bottles. And then one of the 4x6s will be the card. And the other one, I have a photo I recently took of Jonah eating jalapeno poppers, and we just thought it was the funniest thing because Jonah, who is 2.5, loves spicy food, which is totally bizarre. So we had a picture of him eating one and we thought it was funny. So that's going to definitely make its appearance in this spread. And then the other thing I thought to do was to take some pictures of some of the food that we like to make, spicy foods that we enjoy eating. So we have like salsa con carne, which we make homemade here. We have buffalo chicken sandwiches that we love. And then our favorite pizza topping is jalapenos and just jalapenos. So I thought it would be fun to take pictures of all 3 of those meals and then to write a little bit about them, like how did we start eating that, or where did that recipe come from, that sort of thing. So that is what I'm going to do on the larger side of the spread. So it's not necessarily going to be a full page photo. It's going to be almost like a magazine editorial look to it, you know, where it's got the 3 photos and some journaling next to it. So I think that that will look pretty cool. Next, I'm going to move on to the story about Erin doing the cooking around the house now. So for this one, I had pulled out the pots and pans. I pulled out the card that says homemade. And then I also have another card that's not my favorite. So I turned it over and it's got the the grid lines. So I can use the grid to journal on. Then I grabbed a piece of this paper. It's got like a fork, a spoon, and a knife, and it's in a grid-like pattern. So it looks almost quilted, I would say. It's kind of cool. And I was thinking about using that there, but I also just I wasn't really sure. It was a lot of red to go next to the green, and they just they clashed a little bit too much. So instead, what I thought I could do is to take the pots and pans that you see there. I forget if I'm going to add it to this grid pattern or if I find another one. We'll see here as I'm working. But I'm actually going to fussy cut those out. I like the way that they look, but I also think that it's a lot of white space around all those cards. So it might be kind of nice to have a little bit of contrast behind the pots and pans, if that makes sense. Then I turned this other card over and I noticed that there are these really awesome, they're not perfect circles, but they're circles of tomatoes, like a top-down view. You can kind of see one right now. And I thought to myself, how fun would that be to take those tomatoes and fussy cut 3 of them out and use those as bullet points? I think that would be kind of fun. So that's what I'm going to attempt here. We're going to get to the sketching here. I'm going to add this homemade into one of the sections. This is where I'm going to do the pots and pans. And I think actually what I decided to do was to take out the stamp set at some point and I'll stamp a background to go behind it, probably in some kind of grayish tone, something that will help to tie in that homemade card. Or some kind of creamy tone, just something that's a little bit subtle, but also gives a little bit of contrast behind the pots and pans. I'll put a photo in there, some journaling in there. And then I'm going to add a little section at the top of yet another, I don't know if I'm going to make this a 6x8 or, a almost 7x8 1/4. We'll see when I actually get to it. And then I'm going to use those tomatoes as some bullet points because I think that that's kind of fun. So what I will do is put 3 of them at the top. I'll put 3 photos that are vertical underneath that, and then a little bit of journaling underneath each photo to talk about the recipes. So what I'm going to do is find photos of my favorite recipes that Adam, my husband's name is not Adam, it's Aaron, that Aaron has added to our repertoire. That's what I was going for. I combined Aaron and added and came up with Adam. So anyway, Aaron, I want to document the recipes that Aaron has added to our repertoire of recipes that we love. So he recently started making Swedish meatballs, which are awesome. They're so good. He found a recipe for baked spaghetti that's really awesome and good. And then he also started homemaking his own pizzas, all of it. The pizza dough, the pizza sauce, what else? He told me recently he wanted to make something else himself too with it, but I can't remember at this point what that was. But yeah, so the dough and the sauce and all the things, and it's very, very good. So that will be a fun place to document that. For this, I'm just cutting some of those sections so I can add that into my pile. That way I've got the tomatoes that I want to take out. I do add in some of these label stickers. I don't remember where I was going to use those on this spread, but I ultimately take them out of there and put them with a different spread, with this one actually. This is the project that I am perhaps most excited about. So with this release, Kelly also released a stamp set that is beer themed. You guys know that we are a huge craft beer family. Like, we love it. We make our own. It's one of our favorite things. So when I saw that stamp set, I could not press the buy button quick enough. Like, I was so excited about it. So for this one, what I want to do is create a spread that highlights or talks about the different craft beers that we have homebrewed here in our house since the beginning of COVID. That's actually when Aaron started brewing beer. I got him a kit a couple years before that, and it just sat in our basement for a long time. And then he decided during COVID to make it, which we think it was expired because it didn't taste very good when it was done. But it sparked a new hobby. So he has been brewing beer ever since, and so far we have made a total of 6. So this spread is going to be a way for me to document that we have, the different beers that we have brewed and the names that he and his brother had given them and that sort of thing. So I'm calling this the Hall of Fame and or Craft Beer Hall of Fame. And I'm super excited to use all this stuff and tell all these stories. So what I'm going to do is use the label and the backside of this paper. So this paper has a bunch of leaves on it, and then the backside has this green stripe. So I like the tone on tone there with the different patterns. So I'm just going to add a strip of it to the top, put the label on top of that. Then I can add in maybe some puffy stickers that say Hall of Fame or something along those lines. And then I want to go and find the pictures of the different beers that we have brewed. So I have most of them, or all of them. I have a picture of them either like in a cup or in a little sipper or something where I can go grab that photo and print it off in a smaller, like a square version. When I went to sketch this out, I sketched out 9 squares, but we actually only have 6 beers, so there is only going to be 6 squares on this spread. And then this is where I'm going to add in later off screen the smaller labels, and I will find one more from an older Kelly Perky set that I had that matches it. So I'm going to use those to add the names of the different beers underneath the pictures of them. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my stamp set to create the embellishments that will go on the spread. All right, you guys, so that finishes my project planning for today. So my goal was to try and find 4 stories that I could tell with this kit, and I actually ended up with 5 plus a week of project life. So that is a win for me. Now, I didn't use up all of the papers. I still have pieces of 4 of them, which I may end up pulling back out in order to use for some of these stories a little bit later when I actually go to put them together. But I did try to include the pieces that I wanted to include in the projects right away, and then the rest of these will just go into my stash for now. So I am really excited to get working on putting these stories together. I'm thinking I will probably do either the Hall of Fame story or I will do the homemade story. But there's a lot of good ones that came out of this kit this time. So, this will be really fun and some different stories to tell than I probably would have anyway, because I don't really document food very much. So this is, a little something different. Anyway, I hope that this helps inspire you to use your kits, and maybe it gave you some ideas for stories that you could tell regarding your family or your lifestyle. If you enjoyed this video, I would love if you would heart the video down below and maybe let me know what is a story that you are telling with this kit if you are also a subscriber. All right, you guys, so I will be back again tomorrow with a process video for one of these stories. And until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys in tomorrow's video. Bye, friends.